Yuji Itadori and Megumi Fushiguro. The protagonist and the antagonist of Jujutsu Kaisen, and two characters have been stated by Gojo, the ultimate Chad and strongest character in the verse, to have potential to surpass him in strength. While lore about it, or even past the halfway point of the series, its potential is nowhere to be seen, or has been rather diminished or even overshadowed, especially by the most recent culling game arc of the series. I mean, when reading the manga, it's starting to feel like Gege introduces a new special grade level character that would wipe the floor with the main duo every other week, or gives another main character a power up that allows them to completely outclass the two. It's all led me to the conclusion that Yuji and Megumi are just too weak, or not strong enough as they stand now.
大丈夫でしょ。だって君、弱いもん。
On today's video, we're not only going to explain that conclusion, but we're going to fix it by delving into each of these two characters' potential and discussing possible power-ups they could gain. Now this video will be divided into two parts, with the first detailing how weak they are, and the second part covering how strong they can become. What's good, YouTube? It's basically anime. Hope you're having a nice day. And make sure to comment down below where you have Yuji and Megumi in your JJK power rankings. Without further adu, into the video. For those of you who identify as a Yuji or Megumi superfan, and slandering of either character, whether it's justified or not, happens to be your kryptonite, then you might just want to skip to the part where I talk about their potential, because I will not be holding back like at all, so consider this your only warning. Yuji and Megumi are weak. Yuji Itadori is weak. Megumi Fushiguro is weak. Yuji, weak. Megumi, weak. Okay, now I'm just being a hater, but the truth is that they're just not strong enough when compared to the rest of the current cast of the series. And when I say current cast, I'm referring to the characters mainly featured post the Shibuya incident arc. Characters like Maki, Yuta, Hakari, Kashimo, Naoya, Chozo, Kenjaku, and I'm confident that every character that I just mentioned, besides maybe Chozo, could probably take on Yuji and Megumi at the same time and win comfortably at that. I mean, they would no diff them. And to be fair, a lot of the current cast does happen to be special grade and above, a level of power that Yuji and Megumi were just beginning to scratch in Shibuya. And this is to be expected because with the stakes and dangers being hidden with the culling games, the scale of power we can expect to see out of the characters was hidden as well. I mean, if you're not the level of grade 1, much less special grade, you're not getting more than 3 pages worth of screen time past Shibuya. And we actually saw a sneak peek of this shift of the power scale in Shibuya, specifically chapter 101, where Kenta Nanami, a respected and model grade 1 level sorcerer, blatantly tells Nobara that you have to be grade 1 for the upcoming fights that were going to be taking place, and because she wasn't grade 1, she just stay out the area. And I will admit, that might have sounded a little snobbish and mansplaining at the time, but Nobara, the grade 3 sorcerer at the time, and even said respected grade 1 sorcerer Nanami, both didn't make it out of the event alive, or at least when it comes to Nanami, so he was 100% right in his thinking. Now before I go more into Yuji Megumi's current strength in relation to the main cast, it's important to establish how strong they are or were at the end of Shibuya, the arc where this shift in the power scale initially started. Starting with Yuji, it's clear that coming into Shibuya and near the beginning of the arc, he was on par with the level of grade 1 sorcerers, as he's able to match and fight equally alongside Todo in official grade 1 against an opponent like Hanami, a cursed spirit that has been classified to be special grade. This is later reaffirmed when Yuji along with Megumi and Nobara are recommended by Todo and Meimei to be appointed as grade 1 sorcerers. And even if some may try to make the argument that Todo carried in the Hanami fight when it came to the strength aspect, or that the grade 1 portion was a little biased, we still have Yuji's actions and feats early into Shibuya to back up his grade 1 or above strength. From him defeating the Grasshopper Curse, a grade 2 curse spirit with mid difficulty, to him taking on a full power all-out Chozo and putting the need for revenge for Yuji's parts in his brother's death. And for those of you who didn't know or needed to be reminded, because even I forget it sometimes, Chozo is classified to be a special grade level and possesses special grade level strength. And while Yuji did technically lose his battle and spent most of the fight on his back foot, barely evading Chozo's multiple one-shot attacks, the fact that he was able to contend and trade blows with the bloodlusted special grade level Chozo solidifies his grade 1 level placement. And again, he was able to comfortably defeat a grade 2, but lost to a special grade level Chozo, so we can just meet in the middle with grade 1 or above. Now when I say above grade 1, I'm referring to the special grade level of power Yuji begins to show flashes of near the end of Shibuya. This would obviously be due to his fights against Mahito, both in his regular and perfected form. Now using the same logic that I did with how Yuji defeating the grade 2 curse makes him grade 1, one could conclude that Yuji defeating Mahito at his strongest state, his perfected form, which was stated by Mahito himself to be 200% stronger than his regular state, sort of makes Yuji a special grade shoo-in. Well no, it doesn't. Because when it comes to Yuji vs Mahito and Yuji's ultimate win at the end, it really came down to 3 conditions favorable to Yuji that allowed him to win, and without just one of those 3 conditions, in Gege's words, Mahito would have torn him to shreds. 1. Yuji is invulnerable to Mahito's soul manipulation due to being Sukuna's host, as Mahito and the rest of the cursors know better than to mess with Daddy Sukuna, which makes Yuji the only one who could even combat or even harm Mahito safely. 2. While Mahito was at full power, his health bar was practically at 0, as he reveals during the fight that even in his perfected form, he still suffers from the damage he sustained from before he transformed, which includes repeated black flashes from Todo and Yuji, and I mean like a lot of them, as well as Nobara's Resonance attack from earlier in the arc. So practically near the end of the fight, he was just one big shot from losing. 3. Yuji's final black flash imbued with all of his power would have never landed if it wasn't for Todo tricking Mahito with a boogie woogie fake out. It was shown and stated by even Yuji that Mahito in his new form absolutely blitzed and overwhelmed him in speed and strength, so Yuji would have never had the opening to kill Mahito in the first place. That's right, Mahito died to a simple, classic Yuji Todo fake out. And like I said, it is even stated by Gege at the end of the chapter, that if Yuji hadn't hit him with the surprise black flash, with Mahito at his lower state health wise, Mahito would have torn him to shreds. So yes, while acknowledging Yuji does have the combat power to contend, not defeat but contend, with special grade level curses like Mahito and Chozo, he doesn't yet have the power that should comfortably put him in the special grade tier. But according to Chozo, he has grown a lot stronger since the Shibuya incident and even describes Yuji as a monster now. Although we haven't got to see Yuji really push use all of his strength since the Mahito fight, as he was able to win his last little few fights without going all out. So with all that said, I would comfortably place Yuji at being near the peak of grade 1, able to contend with special grade level combatants, but not yet with the power the level of special grade requires. And I don't want to give him the title of special or supreme grade 1, as we were never really given any parameters on that rank, but if there was a sub special grade, I would definitely consider giving it to Yuji, as he just needs a little push, a dive into the potential that's been foreshadowed to get to that special grade level a lot of our current main characters and newer characters are in, but we will talk more about that in the second portion of our video. So yeah, peak of grade 1 for Yuji, moving on to Megumi. Now it's a little bit harder to definitively scale Megumi's power because his versatility with his curse technique is so high, which allows him to put up fights against opponents far above his pay grade. I mean, how many times has Megumi been absolutely manhandled by his opponents who have the power to one-shot him and still make it out alive? So it's to the point that either man is just really lucky or he's just like that, and I'm starting to think that he's just like that. And who else do you know besides maybe Sasuke, who can make getting absolutely beat up look so cool? Anyway, coming into the series and actually into the Tokyo school, Megumi was already classified to be grade 2, like Yuji and Nobara after the Kyoto Goodwill event, was recommended by main Todo to be appointed as grade 1. He then further got stronger, rather more developing his use of curse energy and his potential after casting an incomplete domain expansion, which increases the potential of his curse technique by 110%, although he later increased that to 120% in his Culling Game fight with Reggie. And he only got more stronger and exceptionally overall more smarter and experienced with each of his future fights, taking more and more steps towards refining all of the potential that has been laid out for him. His high tier battle IQ packed with his 10 Shadows curse technique, having aspects of offense, defense, mobility, and recon, makes Megumi a pretty hard opponent to contend and defeat, even when it comes to special grade opponents who far outclass him. Opponents like Todo, the special grade finger bearer, and even his father Toji, who should have been able to annihilate with someone of Megumi's grade, and yet they all found difficulty when it came to actually defeating him. And then added his ultimate trump card in Maharaga, a Shikigami that contended with a 15-finger Sukuna, who had just got done absolutely no diffing a high tier special grade curse in Jogo before his fight with Maharaga. Now while Megumi can't obviously control Maharaga because if he could, he'd probably be a school threat, and summoning Maharaga will probably result in his death, it is a trump card that he could use against special grade level opponents if he had to. So here we have our dude who possesses 10 Shikigami, which were pretty generally weak by themselves, but with the cursed energy and IQ to combine them to put out attacks and maneuvers higher than the level of grade 2. So I'm assuming why you see it's kinda hard to scale him, as he really fights based off his opponent's skills and abilities rather than his or their power level. But overall, I would place Megumi as being a high tier grade 1 level opponent, but with the skill to contend with nearly anyone regardless of their power level. And that is with the incomplete domain expansion but without Maharaga, as it's really only a move Megumi would consider using when willing to sacrifice his life to defeat the opponent. But with him having his Divine Dark Totality as his strongest and primary offense, which possesses the attack power to harm special grade level curses as we saw when it did exactly that in the Hanami fight, and with the domain expansion ability to create multiple clones of said dog, along with clones of his other Shikigami and even himself, I do think that Megumi scratches the level of special grade. So with me officially establishing that both Megumi and Yuji are at the peak of the rank grade 1 or at least the high tier of the grade, why do I still stand here today and label them as not being strong enough even though grade 1 is technically the second strongest grade? Well, just look at nearly everyone else. The Culling Games has featured a whole new cast of characters as we leave the typical school setting and early power scale behind the Shibuya. And again, almost all of these new characters that have been made the main cast of the series wipes the floor with this duo. Maki, the current and new female lead, who is confirmed to be as strong as Toji if not stronger, wipes the floor with them. Hikari, someone who has access to unlimited curse energy at his peak, wipes the floor with them. Yuta, who is officially special grade registered and has an all-powerful sugar mommy in Rika, wipes the floor with them. Along with all the Culling Game opponents, the three I just mentioned have faced, such as Kashimo, the three-way deadlock curse users, and Niowa Zenin, they all absolutely crap on Yuji and Megumi. Like, imagine if Yuji and or Megumi had been placed in the colony with Kashimo or Niowa, or someone who's actually special grade instead of the grade 1 opponents they faced. They're getting absolutely washed, if not killed with their corpse getting sent to the moon. I mean, they would make Sukuna vs Jogo and Shibuya look like a competent two-sided fight. And like I said, this is to be expected as when the villains get stronger, as they for sure have gotten stronger than the grade 1s and 2s from Free Shibuya, so does characters like Maki, Yuta, and Hikari. You introduce multiple, and I mean multiple, to the point where getting a new special grade level Culling Game player introduced every other chapter, or like characters who happen to have absolutely busted curse techniques, like Hana who can nullify CTs, and Takaba who can literally make anything he thinks funny reality. You would then have to up the level of the power the good guys possesses. And yet both Megumi and Yuji just haven't had this grand power increase the likes of Hikari and Maki have experienced. I mean, as it stands now, I could probably name 15 to 20 characters that could defeat both of them at the same time, and I'll actually go ahead and do that. So we got Maki, Toji, Yuta, Gojo, Gedo, Kenjaku, Yuki, Hikari, Niowa, the three-way deadlock curse users, Kashimo, Takaba, Sukuna, Jogo, Mahito at full power and health, Dagon. Okay, the fact that I can still keep going for like 5 names is actually kind of sad. And if you paid attention to those names, every single one of them are special grade and above. That trend alone completely backs up my argument of Yuji and Megumi not being strong enough as they are. With newer villains and newer characters all registering above special grade, and these newer characters making up the main cast, Yuji and Megumi are left in the dust of grade 1. They just aren't strong enough. And unlike their fellow allies, they haven't yet experienced a power-up that allows them to contend with characters of this higher power scale. Well, until now, because we've spent long enough dogging on my favorite duo of the series, I think it's time we help them out by discussing how it passed for them to get into this higher level of power that is special grade. Now, because we started out the how weak part of the video with Yuji, we're going to start off this part with Megumi. One of the objectively top 3 JJK characters. Okay, when it comes to Megumi, the easiest path or pass for him to get special grade level power is mastering his domain expansion and taming Maharaga. Because like I've already stated, Megumi has the ability and skill to contend with special grade level opponents, but he just lacks the sheer power. And the mastered complete domain expansion coupled with Maharaga is the perfect supplement for this lack of power. Starting with the Master Domain expansion, because while even though incomplete, Megumi's domain still greatly increases the output of his 10 Shadows technique, such as giving him the ability to spam clones of each Shikigami. And when mastered, this 10 Shadow technique will only increase further, probably from a few clones to a small army. Even though Megumi's incomplete domain still lacks one of the key components to a domain expansion, a guaranteed hit. Now, while not every guaranteed hit of the domain is lethal to your opponent, similar to Hikari, whose guaranteed hit is really just a guaranteed information dump, Megumi's domain expansion is already very combat oriented, so we can only assume that this unrevealed guaranteed hit will probably have something to do with maximizing his curse technique's effectiveness even more than the ability to make clones of his Shikigami does. And while at the end of the day I can only theorize what this guaranteed hit can do, I personally believe it may actually allow him to manipulate the shadow of his opponent. Because while the domain is active, he freely manipulates the shadow floor of the domain to store objects, hide himself, and make clones of himself and his numerous Shikigami. He has control of absolutely everything in his domain but his opponent. And the guaranteed hit aspect of the domain is usually what makes the domain lethal to the user's opponent. So imagine if he can now make clones of his opponent, equipped with their abilities that can assist him in the battle. And with the increased technique output he would already be getting from mastering the domain, putting his opponent against a small army of Shikigami, himself, and the opponent themselves is something that can allow Megumi to go from a tough opponent to beat to a scary one, and would definitely put him in the tier of low special grade. And you still have to couple that with a tame Maharaga, a Shikigami or Megumi that has proven to have the power to contend with high tier special grade level opponents, as you saw in the Sukuna fight. Under Megumi's complete control would be absolutely insane, especially when Megumi could theoretically make clones of Maharaga when the domain expansion is activated. And again, a 50-finger Sukuna who had just destroyed a high-tier special grade in Jogo had trouble defeating one Maharaga. Now imagine a small army of Maharaga coming at an opponent in Megumi's domain expansion. Now of course, he's still yet to exercise and completely tame Maharaga, but knowing Megumi with his high-tier combat IQ, I believe once he masters his domain expansion, he'll then have the power to deal with Maharaga and thus exercise him. So yeah, for Megumi, it all comes down to fully realizing the potential in tools like domain expansion and Maharaga to break a new level of power like special grade. And next we have Yuji Itadori. Yuji, good old 3-combo punch Yuji. Now when it comes to what Yuji can do to finally get to the level of power he has been contending with for a while now, his situation is actually opposite of Megumi. While Megumi has the ability and skill but lacks the power, Yuji has all the power he needs, and trust me, all the power he could possibly need, but just not the ability or skill that Megumi possesses with his technique. Overall, what I'm trying to say, this man Yuji needs a technique. I mean, it's about time. Cause bro's arsenal was really just punch spamming. And the immense speed and strength that Yuji possesses, and even more so he can get from being Sukuna's host, still won't allow him to defeat opponents like Gojo, Yuta, or even Chozo as we saw when they fought in Shibuya. It's just time, man. Gege needs to give this man a curse technique, and one that Yuji can actually understand, because even I get confused on some of these newer curse techniques. Hakari. And the thing is that Yuji has already been foreshadowed to obtain a curse technique. All the way back in chapter 12 when Gojo is teaching Yuji about and how to control curse energy, he says that in due time Yuji's body will learn or obtain Sukuna's curse technique. And I believe that due time is near, as Yuji will soon, if not already, has hit a peak when it comes to his physical prowess and how that will work with his future opponents. Because like I've said, they will only get stronger and stronger with the techniques, and simply overhauling them with strength won't be enough. But of what Sukuna's many techniques will Yuji learn? Because Daddy Sukuna has shown he has a whole bag of tricks, and he's even bragged about it, from dismantle and cleave slashing attacks Sukuna uses often, to the ability to create and manipulate fire that even exceeds Dogo's ability. So yeah, it's kinda nearly impossible to theorize on Yuji's future curse technique, because we have still only scratched the surface of what Sukuna can do. And there's also still a possibility with him unlocking some secret innate power of his, due to his creation by the hands of Kenjaku, the ultimate mastermind who also made Chozo and his brothers. Either way, Yuji's next step is definitely a technique, and with that, the possible domain expansion that comes with this technique, as he already possesses a deep understanding of curse energy due to his skill with black flashes to pull off a feat like that. Now, as we're nearing the end of the video, I think it's important to note, I don't really mean any hate towards these two characters, because they are one of my favorite duos in all of New Gen, but what's gotta be said is gotta be said. Yuji and Megumi gotta hit the jackpot for a power-up soon, because if Gege introduces another special grade level opponent like Kashimo, or makes another main character like Hakari special grade, you might as well call Yuji and Megumi the backup and boot them down to supporting. But yeah, definitely a change needs to occur with these two characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, and I hope I gave a good insight to what that change might be. Anyway, this is the end of the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more base Jujutsu Kaisen content. Things like character or fight analysis is on the way. Make sure to check out a previous video I did on Hakari's power, turn on post notifications, follow the Twitter at Basic Anime, and most importantly, make sure to comment down below your thoughts on Yuji and Megumi's current power, how they match up with other main characters and verse videos you want to see on that, and where you have them ranked on the power scale. With all that said, Yuji and Megumi are a top 2 New Gen duo. Have a nice day.